alaikum. How are you, Sahil?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good also. So, tell me, as a medical doctor, it really fascinates me. I've been practicing medicine since 12 years, and it really fascinates me for a person from a non-medical background exploring this wonderful concept of applying human physiology in the corporate sector, and how our body works and how the human mind responds to different chemicals. So I read a lot of your articles, and I found them very fascinating. And I would like to know what's this good and bad hormone theory that you promote? What's about this good hormone and bad hormone? What is it?
Actually, it's a misconception about source code that we have tagged
Okay.
cortisol or norepinephrine as the bad cops. We actually believe that there is no one chemical or an inch of our body which is useless or has any sort of a hindrance in any sort of the natural process of evolution. However, since I've spoken so much about the cortisol and norepinephrine, that it seems that since cortisol represents fear, danger, even though it's a reaction to all of these situations, people have actually started to think that I'm against cortisol or any sort of situation which actually leads towards cortisol, even though there are situations which actually cortisol helps us out of. Cortisol is the survival chemical.
Yes.
But
It's true.
Since when we talk about a culture of a company, we actually don't want it to be overflown by cortisol. Since of course when you analyze any company, you can actually pinpoint one certain medium, one color of that culture. And most of our companies that we've actually analyzed, trained, or it's more of a demographic trend here that insecurity or fear or risk of losing our job is like the theme of the day, and that's what people are actually coming day in day out to save their job. This is what actually is this is why we are so this is why inevitably we have to talk about cortisol so much. So it seems as if we're calling it the bad chemical, even though it's the whole culture that actually is prone towards cortisol. And naturally cortisol is not the ideal chemical for your everyday situations. This is not your natural human interaction that should be based on how much cortisol I can give you. Whenever I'm going to meet you, I'm going to trigger some cortisol. This is why we actually call it the last resort. People should have some degree of cortisol in order to actually get that outreach or that stretch towards the target, or overachieve at times, based on some sort of good stress that we can actually inject. But it's become a norm of the day. CEOs or managers or directors or team leaders, they actually put fear inside the team or stress them out, so that or strain is one of the tools to get the job done. I think this is why we call it the cortisol company. So this is why I think this is the kind of conception people actually get, that that we're all about cortisol, even though they're all about oxytocin.
Right. So I think I kind of agree with your conclusion that you've drawn regarding how cortisol works in the body. That cortisol is basically a steroid hormone that's released in response to stress, and it is just like you said, it's a survival hormone, and it is required in acute stress conditions. If, let's say, if something happens, the room comes on fire, then it's exactly this hormone that's going to get us running, and
Exactly.
and yeah. But from a medical standpoint of view, too much of cortisol, which results as a result of long-term stress, actually messes up the body. It results in protein breakdown, bone decomposition, and as well as your immune system becomes messed up. And
The worst part is, I've actually shared this study in one of my most recent articles, that there was this same test given to a control group of sample of rich kids, and the same test given to poor kids.
okay,
And poor kids, obviously coming from a low socioeconomic background, had more cortisol-driven lives with hardships and some sort of a stress going on day in day out in their daily routines. And even though there are, of course, the rich kids were also human beings. It had enough cortisol in their veins as well. But since they were not overflown with it over the whole period of time during their growth, the same control group of rich kids scored marvelously well over and over again. There were multiple tests given to this control group as compared to the poor kids, which actually showed clearly that cortisol actually hindered the growth pattern of the brain, and they were underdeveloped because of such a pro-cortisol situation they were in. And the rich kids were, since of course they had less stress, less things to worry about, they had better brain growth and better IQs and even better emotional quotients, even though when we assume somehow that harsh situations are going to develop our emotional quotients because of some sort of a survival technique that you'll have to come out with. It didn't. Cortisol actually stops all the quotients. This is not just a protein breakdown. It's the whole developmental cycle that actually hinders. This is why I'm thinking, newcomers, when they enter a building which is already, cortisol pro, they drop their IQ right there on the door before they even start working for that company. This is why innovation does not ever happen in companies which are, where people are surviving for the job, or they're trying to save their job. They're pulling each other's legs. They're more politically tuned just to survive. They're not working towards the company. They're working to save their job by the end of the day. This is what cortisol does to the big companies, or even households.
Yeah, I guess that's very true. Like you put people in a box and then you expect them to think out of the box.
Exactly. Yes.
Whereas you're like it's a cortisol pro environment, just like you said. And when you push in, when you're increasing their stress levels, then you can just forget about any productivity coming out from them. And I think it's a wonderful thing that you're applying or planning to apply in the corporate sector, in which you want to
even in schools.
And I think our hospitals in the country, they also record there's a dire need of this concept and this new way of training to be so that the practice, the way doctors practice and paramedical staff practice this thing, I think there's a dire need of this in the medical sector as well. Like hospitals and medical related institutions really require that this pro-cortisol environment should be highly discouraged. I mean, you have just sharing an example from my practice, that you have a patient who's been newly diagnosed with a really, let's say, demoralizing or depressing ailment, and now if you just tear his life down, tell him all the stats and all the gloomy prognosis and everything, so you just kill them. It was better if you just took out a gun and shot him right then, because you just killed his will to fight.
I know.
Because too much cortisol brings down the immune system, like you said, and then it like literally just kills your will to fight the system. So I think our hospitals also need this.
This is what the hospital is doing to the consumer. See, now this is his end product. This is where the hospital is going to get money from. But that's exactly that's bad business, so to speak. But I'm also talking about how since of course most of the hospitals are corporate bodies now. They run their KPIs just like any other company in the world. So all the staff, the workforce of the hospital itself, if it is surviving for their own job, they're going to transfer. Since we never realized for some odd reason that human beings are the biggest induction devices. If you have enough cortisol and you're practicing your life based on some situation which is emitting those hormones day in, day out, I'm going to catch that right away. Just the same like with oxytocin. An act of kindness is going to generate, your act of kindness is going to generate oxytocin in my veins. Just like that, your fear or disorders, your stresses are going to cause cortisol flow in my veins. Yeah. People just don't realize that human beings actually induce chemicals to each other by just the sight and sounds.
That's very true. That's the same that we have positive vibes and negative vibes, and people you like being around and people who you would rather not meet. That's very true. So you just mentioned oxytocin. What's your take on oxytocin? Is this this is the
I think the very basis of humanity, the evidence of the love of the Creator for the creation, is this one commonality between the 7 billion people on this planet, and that's oxytocin. And not just human beings, it's, all mammals.
True.
The fact that there's rahim and love and care and sacrifice on this planet is based on just one chemical, and it lights up every time there's an act of random kindness. The real leadership model of the house, the selfless of the parents for the kids, the altruistic behavior of the whole family for each other, the ability to just jump in front of the bus for any one of your siblings or your folks, is based on this one chemical. Yeah, I think this is the reason why we're all humans. If the corporate body anywhere in the world, if we just didn't use 1% of this chemical and base their models on the fabric of the household, I think we would have greater business revenues coming in, and still people would be prospering, even if they wouldn't be doing so well in business, and they would still have employees giving 100%. I can give you hundreds of examples of great companies coming down because of they lost track of this one chemical, and also I can give you 100 examples of low performing companies where people came together and built up an empire just because they just went for each other. And I think if not now, in some time in the future, when science is just going to start projecting oxytocin everywhere, I think most of the models of the companies will be based on this science alone.
Yeah.
Because after all, it's all human beings we're talking about, right?
That's very true, very true. Because oxytocin is something that's released, or it comes into action just before and after childbirth, and it has a very important role in social bonding.
Yeah.
And that's the exact hormone because of which the mother, even after having gone through such distress, has the ability to share her love and her feelings for the newborn. And I couldn't agree more that your concept that God originally abundantly, what should I say, gifted out oxytocin.
Yeah.
And then if just like you said, like if it starts with the family, and then you can bring that positive feelings of oxytocin with you to your institute, to your hospital, or to wherever, and whenever you're doing some good, or being kind to other people, being helpful to other people, helping other people become more productive. So the whole environment becomes a positive environment, which results in increased sense of well-being and
sense of giving.
And sense of giving, and as a result, the hospital or the institution or the corporate sector starts doing well. Absolutely.
Yeah. See, the way I see it, the entry to this planet for every human being was announced by this chemical. The woman goes through the biggest supply of oxytocin in any mammal's body is when a woman is giving birth. So this is the announcement of an entry of a human being in the planet. I mean, it's not just the philosophy. The very science itself actually signifies that the very evidence of humanity is because of this one chemical. There is no way any human being can go through a surge of such a high dose of oxytocin in any other situation, right? Compared to when a woman is giving birth. So when you are actually coming inside the planet, it is announced by this very chemical.
True.
This was the very evidence that this was the thing that's going to make you survive, and this is something that you have to give out now.
Yeah.
So I think, as I just said, later on, I'm thinking about less than 20, 50 years from now, management science is going to be developed on this philosophy, because this is so good for business as well. It's human beings which form together to achieve way more than they possibly think they can, and it's only because of this safety that we feel. It's called the Peltzman effect. When they invented the seat belts, people started driving faster because they felt secure.
True.
So oxytocin makes you feel secure around each other, and then they take bigger risks because they have nothing. They know that if they fall short, someone's going to come in, pick them up. Yeah. This is only because of this one chemical. I do not know why businesses have not adopted to this technique of management and getting people around and sticking them together. And some people have naturally. It was not based on this science. It just happened because since it's right there. I mean, it comes so. It's like Beethoven. He didn't have to learn the piano. He just sat. He just knew. This is exactly what it's the call of nature for all human beings. If you want to do anything productive in this world, let alone just business. I mean, business is just one part of life. If you want to do anything that you think is not achievable, and you still think you want to jump in the pool for it, I think this is the one chemical that's going to help. Well, to get there. This is our case. This is why we want to shout out the chemical engineering and the liquid engineering and the fluid engineering, or whatever people are calling it, this source code philosophy. This is all we're trying to project.
Yeah, it's really surprising. I should call it. It's a shame that such a this is how our human body works and how our human mind responds to these chemicals, and it's surprising that this concept hasn't been applied in our institutions. Like, this is a wonderful thing that can have wonderful results, and I think that you already have some training going on, and some programs which have been accepted, and I'm looking forward to your this concept being introduced in hospitals as well. I mean, from someone from the medical profession.
I think that would be the easiest for me to, because you
because
guys are the masters of endocrinology.
Yeah, because we have cortisol going high levels of cortisol in the patients, among the doctors even, and even among the attendants. So I think this is a wonderful new concept of training, which should have been, to be honest, should have been practiced since ages ago.
I know, 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm from the first day of science. I think diagnosis is half the cure. That's what we believe. Once we know what is the problem, we can actually try and fix it.
Yeah.
And for hospitals, they already know what cortisol is, and they know how to detect whether it's a stress situation, what's going on. So if doctors are not going to know about it, then I don't know who will.
So basically, we reached the conclusion that it's a science, right?
Yeah.
And you said some people have naturally adopted this thing,
they just
but
came together.
Yeah, they just realize it and they're practicing it without even knowing it. But we know that it's a science, right? And this is what source code is doing: is that applying these as a simple rule of science and showing its results in a matter of let's say a couple of months. That's most. Right?
Yeah, well, in some cases, the bigger the team, the more time it's going to take. But
yeah.
This is what our main slogan was. If you don't know the science, don't practice the art. And this is exactly what we were referring to: oxytocin. Oh. If you don't know the power, if everyone's a Superman, everyone has that super weapon installed by birth, and he's just not flying.
Yeah.
He's just walking around, running around on the streets, thinking, oh my God, I got nothing to show for or to help other people with. I mean, this is just a shame. This is why we want the science of things to come into play and become a model for everybody, because it was we're just sitting on it.
True. Well, so I had read quite a lot of your articles, and as a doctor, I was interested in us meeting up for a small discussion on this, and I'm really looking forward to you introducing this wonderful concept into practice across institutions across the country, and especially I'm looking forward to you jumping in the medical sector and bring about a change, hopefully. Inshallah. Okay, nice meeting you.
Thank you.